So I don't have a lot to report right now. I always just say that and you end up yakking forever anyway. Um, what we got is a Chinese warship nearly smacked into a American warship about a week or so ago, maybe a little more, give or take. And it was a close call. We're talking like 180 yards out, like a football, not quite two football fields out. Evasive maneuvers had to take. And these are the kind of flash in the pan incidents what could give us like a very nuclear Christmas. Yeah, yeah. What was it? Yeah. NATO soldiers roasting on a nuclear fire. That's pretty sick, isn't it? But you get the idea anyway. So, yeah, so, I mean, those are the type of things that I'm talking about. Those kind of flat, like, World War III is going to be a flash in the pan incident. The Kursk, I watched a documentary on the Russian Navy just to kind of see what their new stuff is up to and stuff like that. At one point, the Russians, at their height and glory, had like 3,000 vessels. Now they're about 100, mostly submarine fleet. Their submarines are very, very good, but they're noisy, which is good because you can detect them. But they're freaking fast, like their Akula 2s, like 45 knots underwater. And then, of course, they got the Scaval torpedo, which goes about 300 knots underwater. That's ridiculously fast. The technology is, that's a ship killer regardless of where it hits it. So you got the Russians, they've been gearing up their land forces. Topolem's got 10 new divisions. This is from Vladimir Putin, The Russian Su-35 is pretty much, going strong. That's their frontline fighter. But they have so many different types of fighters. And then, of course, their helicopters, their Ka-50s, the Ka-52. They got other stuff coming up. And then they've got a couple of warships that are kind of semi-amphibious. Most of these warships and their aircraft carriers are old, like 1970s, and just been upgraded. But they are good warships. They're missile boats is basically what they are. You could arguably, call them a battle destroyer, which is, they're not quite big enough to be a battleship. They're a little bit too big to be a destroyer. But their missile, I forget the name of their anti-shipping missile, which is pretty good. The tactics of these missiles is pretty devastating. It'll definitely would be a handful for an Aegis ship to be able to repel 24 of these missiles coming at them at the same time, which could also be launched from the Oscar II submarines from underneath the surface. And then, of course, you have the dreaded Akula Typhoon submarine. They still have about 3 of those in service. And they typically keep 2 on active duty once or twice a year. Their new Bori-class submarine is already, I guess it's doing the sea trials. It might be done I haven't seen what the Yazan submarine looks like yet. But these are the replacement subs. So they're probably going to be quieter, more powerful. The Bori-class submarine is a boomer sub. Very, very terrifying. And of course, the Russians are, re-establishing their Arctic bases. A lot of this has to do with Canada. Like anybody that denies there's a Cold War on right now is definitely an ostrich. But because the media isn't doing like they did in the 1950s, where they were actually, every day was, we're seconds from being nuked. The media now is just not covering it. It's a total different agenda. But it is there. You can find this stuff very trackable, very easily. And Russia is gearing up for the conflict. The northern base that they're, up in the Arctic, that they're getting ready it's an old decommissioned base, but it puts us it puts them very close to Canada. It does. With that said, here in Canada we've been pretty much working on building 21 new warships of for the Canadian military or Canadian Navy. I don't have a lot of details on these ships. I've seen some kind of little bit of details on, but I don't know what they're going to be called. I don't know what class they're going to be. I know they're going to be icebreakers. I'm sure some are going to be frigates, and but they're supposed to be multi-role boats, so I don't know exactly what they're going to look like. Right now, we have 3 tribal class destroyers, and they were built in the 1970s, some in the 1960s. And been retrofitted in the 1990s, and then again, I think in the early 2000s they got retrofitted. They're pretty good. They're pretty well armed, but they're destroyers. They're not battleships. And we're still waiting for our Sikorsky helicopters, the Cyclone helicopters, which we got one. We got one, but that one's just kind of like a demonstrator. It's not really the final variant. So I was like, oh god. And then we've got 4 submarines, which have got a lot of controversy on them. But and then whenever the F-35 arrives, God knows what controversy is going to go on that. I hope the thing at least works, you know. But that said, we still got about 140 CF-18s and stuff like that. So and then, you know, we got the, you know, state-of-the-art Leopard 2A6, 2A7s, and the 2A4 tanks, which have been, you know, we upgrade the Leopard tanks here in Canada quite a bit. We had about, I think, 500. There might be only about 250 left. I'm sure we get rid of a bunch of them every now and then. We usually end up selling military equipment to like Australia or Belgium or places like that, and whatever. But a lot of stuff is under contract. So, you know, we might only lease it for X, Y, Z amount of years and give it back. But the Navy ships are built here, and they are ours. And now, of course, the Navy ships here, there has been some outsourcing on these ships. And, of course, they're over budget and whatever. You know, you expect it. But we need these ships. The nice thing is that these ships, I think, are going to be a lot better than the submarine deal. Because the submarine, this is the problem when you buy things, is you're buying stuff that wasn't really designed for you. Our submarines are at their midlife, basically, and they're just going into service now. And there's all kinds of Shikoodami caught fire. These are the Upholder Victoria class submarines, which is an SSK variant. Victoria is kind of the flagship. It seems to be doing the best. It's done torpedo trials. I don't think they have the Harpoon missiles in them. Like they were supposed to. They've had all kinds of troubles with the submarines, starting with the British, you know, sold them to us real cheap, and I believe it was trade for airspace time and stuff like that. And the problem was this: is when we got them, they'd been sitting in the water, salt water, for 15 years. So the fuel tanks were rusted out. The wiring wasn't to standard. You know, like there was only one layer of shielding on the wiring when there should have been three. So we had the fire with the Shikoodami. Cornerbrook smacked the bottom of the ocean last year, so that one's got a bad fender bender. The Windsor is apparently has structural problems with the hull, so it has because of the rust in the hull, it has a dive limit. And then I guess the Victoria is kind of okay. Now that said, it sounds pretty grim, but these are still really good submarine designs. It's just, you know, factoring in the damage we had to replace them. That said, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't, like, kind of you know, rather than reinvent the wheel, just build a better mousetrap. Take the Victoria class submarines, and basically tool up for it. Yes, it's expensive to tool up for these things. Oh, we could just go buy the Scorpion or the U-212 or the 214 SSKs from Germany. Yeah, we could do that, but then we're always buying something from somebody else that doesn't quite have it right for Canada. We need a boat that can patrol. Like the SSK, like the roll is fine. It's just, you know, we even had problems with the torpedo tubes not being the right torpedo tube sizes for the actual torpedoes. And they had to redo that. So we had all these snags. But the lessons, I think, have been learned. And yes, it's a lot of money. But they're a quiet submarine. They're diesel electric. They got good range. Perfect for intercoastal. They're small enough to be a good fast attack sub against, you know, the big subs, you know, up in the Arctic. And the argument is, okay, well, we have them so the Americans can, you know, track submarines to get used to tracking submarines, quiet diesel electric submarines. That's not the only reason we have them, you know. Like, if you need a justification, well, it's simple. Akula Typhoon. That's the justification for a submarine fleet. Why? Because if you know where those things launch from, you know where they're going to be, and you know that you have to get them before they can get to the surface. You know, you got a big 570-foot long submarine pop up through the ice, ready to launch 20 nuclear missiles with 200 warheads. You need something to get to that, and one of the best things is a submarine. So there doesn't seem to be any plans to replace these submarines. There's no talks about it. Or maybe there's a secret deal that they're going to just buy some, you know, kind of bugs are worked out of them submarines. The Scorpion seems to be the best option. And the U-212, the Dolphin submarine, is basically, or U-31, U-30, 212, and the U-214 and 414 are the German submarines. And the Israelis use them. They're a good submarine. They're one of the best designs out there. But again, even these submarines are kind of old. You know, but you know, if we just bought them, well, it's like, well, we're buying old technology. We need to build them. Yes, it'll be overpriced and over budget and stuff like that. But, I mean, again, we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of things that we could probably use off the current existing submarines and just start with a new hull, a new this, a new that. So it's not so much an upgrade, but an actually totally redesigned. And we should do it with the fighters and everything. We should never be buying stuff. Yes, it's more expensive, and people want to keep the taxes low, but when you build it in your own country, the money stays in your country. That's why I like the idea of the ships built for patrol. And considering the Russians are gearing up big time, again, we don't want to be caught with our pants down. The Canadian Navy is a good Navy. It just needs a little bit of an upgrading. And then, when we have 3 tribal class, the Ojibwe, what's the Ojibwe? The, not Cayuga. Anyway, the Iroquois and I forget the other destroyer we have. These are good destroyers. The submarines are good. It's just, they need to be, I guess, a new version of them. And then, of course, whatever other, upgrades that we can do to lower maintenance and lower costs of operation, then yeah. 100 ships from Russia. One thing about Canadians is even in World War II, we've always had a good anti-submarine fleet. Now, for submarine detection, we have 3 P-3 Orions. That's it. And I think those are, those things, they get a grant every now and then to go out on maritime patrol, and then it's like, they're too expensive, so we scrap it. Go out every couple of years, it seems to happen like that. But again, they could take that same P-3 Orion, just modernize the thing. Let's tweak it. Put more fuel-efficient engines in it. Build a new airframe, based on a similar design. It's again, not, it is expensive, but, if you get something that's lower maintenance, well, you save in the maintenance, If you have longer range on less fuel, you save there, Again, you detect an Akula typhoon coming up through the ice, ready to launch, you want to be able to deal with that. That's one thing about the Russian Navy, is it is a very proud Navy, and it's a very well-equipped Navy. I think it's still the 3rd largest Navy in the world, 2nd or 3rd. The Americans would be the first, I can imagine. Either Britain or China would be the 2nd, and then I don't know who's the largest, or the 3rd, but I believe that they're the 3rd largest. I don't know where we are, with 3 warships, probably, but still, 3 warships. A lot of countries don't have warships, So I think what we have is good, but it needs upgrading for sure. When these new maritime ships come out, that's going to be, better, because they're going to be brand new. So even when we look at other countries like Russia and stuff like that, retrofit is not the same as brand new. We're going to have a design advantage there. So. And all that. So, but anyway, that's where we're at on those fronts. So again, things are moving along. Even Canada, there's a lot of training up in the Arctic and stuff like that. There is a foreseen conflict coming up there, because the Russians they're not happy with Canada making the sovereignty claim. They're not happy with that at all. And if we get the sovereignty claim, we're going to see a lot of Russian ships up in the Arctic. And for those people, we don't need this, we don't need that. When the Russian troops start coming over the hilltops with the Chinese and the North Koreans, and they will, because if there's nothing to stop them, what's to stop them? You know what I mean? So yes, it is a lot of money. It's stuff that most people, when you put it to them, people who follow my channel probably agree with me. You need you got to cut the foreign spending over there. Never mind, doing that, but over there, put the money into, defending your borders, and that's what we need to do, because we got 3 fronts here. We got the Atlantic, the Pacific, and we also have the Arctic. We have 3 fronts that we have to defend on. We do a lot of joint stuff with the Americans, but we also seen the American submarine fleet's getting pretty much scrapped as well. Obama's cutting everything. He's making the country as vulnerable as possible. We may have to take up the slack. Think about that. When Canada has to take up the slack, you know what I mean? That's a pretty scary world we're living in. But again, the Canadian Navy, I do not doubt. In the Canadian submarines, they are good. It's just they've got their problems. If we were starting with a clean slate, fresh-built submarine, even the way they are, they would have been really, really good. But that's the things, trial and error, and a liberal government, that's what they'll get you. So I still support the submarines, but we need new ones, because these ones were duds to begin with. So how do you take a lemon and make it into a thoroughbred? You know what I mean? That's the problem we're stuck with. But the design I do like, and these if you build them in Canada for Canadian Canadian Navy, these things would be very, very, very advanced. I mean, it's not like we're not capable of the technology. I mean, Canada's very, very innovative. It's just I'll give you an example. The F-86 Sabre back in the 1950s, we had 1,800 of those. It was our most numerous fighter that Canada ever had. jet fighter that we ever had was 1,800 of those. And the American F-86 Sabre had 5,000 pounds thrust. Canadians got them. We tweaked them to get 7,000 pounds thrust. There was an incident where an American pilot took up a Canadian Canada Air CL F-86 Sabre, took it up to fly, cracked the throttle, and the thing kind of took off, and he bailed out because he thought there was an explosion behind him. What he didn't realize is there was an extra 2,000 pounds of thrust back there. Therefore, he was never allowed to fly another Canadian airplane again. This is a true story. But that's the thing. It's same with our CF-18s. Like, we hot rodded them. We built them under contract, which was good, but our newest CF-18 was built in 1987. You know what I mean? So we're due for those F-35s, but again, the F-35s, we're buying something, sure, it might be state-of-the-art in the Mojave Desert, but it's not going to do much in the Arctic, if it doesn't have all the navigation equipment that we need. So I guess this is a bit of a pitch for the Canadian Armed Forces in that sense, or the Royal Canadian Armed Forces, but you have to look at what we have, just so you know what's in your country, what we have to contend with. Again, we're looking at when all warships and everything are done, 21 ships versus 100 ships, and most submarines against the Russians, and then you add the Chinese on that. We got a very tall order to fill if we have to ever defend ourselves against these people. And the Chinese, it's just a matter of time. The Russians, it's just a matter of time. Because right now we do see the brewing with the Arctic sovereignty. It's a big one. People look into it. Our Prime Minister is actually right on that one. So anyway, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. There's stuff to cover in North Korea with craziness going on there, but it's mostly same old. But the idea that a Russian or a Chinese warship nearly smacked into a American warship, I think is cause for alarm. Again, people say, oh yeah, but we'll never go to a thermonuclear war because the elites are in control, and they'll always keep us on the brink, but they're never going to push it. But you have to understand, there's soldiers there that might take it a little more personally if their ship gets rammed by a foreign enemy's ship. You know what I mean? And if you're, again, it's going to be a flash in the, it's only a matter of time before a Japanese pilot shoots down a Chinese pilot or vice versa. It's because it's the men that are probably sparking. Again, when we look at the Kursk, although they do revisionist history on it, it was sunk by a Mark 48 torpedo, and if that would have been warships on the surface, instant World War III. So anyway, rate, subscribe, definitely comment, share, like, and any if you know anything more about these new Canadian warships, like details of exactly what they're going to be replacing and stuff like that, because I got very limited. I don't know what classes are going to be or stuff like that. So if you got that, please post it. So rate, subscribe, definitely share, like, comment, all that stuff. Okay, hi and welcome. World War III update. Okay, here we go. I don't have a lot to report right now. I always just say that, yakking forever anyway. What we got is a Chinese warship nearly smacked into a American warship about a week or so ago, maybe a little more, give or take. And it was a close call. We're talking like 180 yards out, like a football, not quite 2 football fields out. Evasive maneuvers had to take. And these are the kind of flash in the pan incidents which could give us like a very nuclear Christmas. Yeah. What would we say? Yeah. NATO soldiers roasting on a nuclear fire. That's pretty sick, isn't it? But you get the idea anyway. So, those are the type of things that I'm talking about. Those kind of like World War III is going to be a flash in the pan incident. The Kursk, I watched a documentary on the Russian Navy just to kind of see what their new stuff is up to and stuff like that. At one point, the Russians, at their height and glory, had like 3,000 vessels. Now they're about 100. Mostly submarine fleet. Their submarines are very, very good, but they're noisy, which is good because you can detect them. But they're freaking fast, like they're Akula 2s, like 45 knots underwater. And then, of course, they got the Scaval torpedo, which goes about 300 knots underwater. That's ridiculously fast. The technology is, that's a ship killer regardless of where it hits it. So you got the Russians, they've been gearing up their land forces. Topolam's got 10 new divisions. This is from Vladimir Putin, The Russian Su-35 is pretty much, going strong. That's their frontline fighter. But they have so many different types of fighters. And then, of course, their helicopters, their Ka-50s, the Ka-52. They got other stuff coming up. And then they've got a couple of warships that are kind of semi-amphibious. Most of these warships and their aircraft carriers are old, like 1970s, and just been upgraded. But they are good warships. They're missile boats is basically what they are. You could arguably, you could call them a battle destroyer, which is, they're not quite big enough to be a battleship. They're a little bit too big to be a destroyer. But their missile, I forget the name, the name of their anti-shipping missile, which is pretty good. The tactics of these missiles is pretty pretty devastating. It'll definitely would be a handful for an Aegis ship to be able to repel 24 of these missiles coming at them at the same time, which